age-old dream of reaching the stars. Humanity's long fascination with rockets, from
Have you ever looked up at the night sky, at that vast, glittering darkness, and felt a pull, a sense of wonder? For as long as we've walked this earth, humanity has shared a collective dream: to reach for the stars. It's a desire woven into our myths, our stories, and our very DNA, from ancient astronomers charting constellations to children wishing upon a shooting star. The cosmos has always been our ultimate frontier. This isn't just a modern obsession. It's a timeless yearning. But how do you bridge the gap between the ground beneath our feet and the celestial bodies light years away? For centuries, the answer was pure imagination. We dreamed of flying on the backs of mythical creatures, of being carried to the moon by a flock of birds, or of climbing celestial ladders. These were beautiful, poetic fantasies, but they were just that, fantasies. The real shift, the moment our dream began to take on the shape of reality, came with a single, revolutionary idea: the rocket. The concept itself is surprisingly ancient, starting with simple fireworks and weapons in ancient China. Imagine the awe of those early inventors, watching a tube filled with powder hiss and shoot into the air. It was a crude beginning, but it was a beginning. For the first time, we had a device that could defy gravity, even if only for a few fleeting seconds. Through the Renaissance and the Age of Enlightenment, thinkers and innovators refined these ideas. They weren't just building bigger fireworks. They were starting to understand the science behind them. People like Leonardo da Vinci sketched out designs for flying machines, while Isaac Newton laid down the fundamental laws of motion that, centuries later, would govern every single rocket launch. Newton's third law: for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, is the very soul of rocketry. It's the simple, elegant principle that allows a rocket to push against itself and climb into the heavens. But the true pioneers, the ones who transformed the rocket from a weapon of war or a festive firework into a vessel for cosmic exploration, were a handful of visionaries in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These weren't just engineers. They were dreamers with slide rules. First, there was the brilliant but reclusive Russian schoolteacher, Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. Working in relative obscurity, he drew up the foundational equations for spaceflight. He was the first to seriously propose using liquid propellant rockets for space travel and even calculated the velocity a rocket would need to escape Earth's gravity. He envisioned multi-stage rockets, space stations, and colonization of the solar system, all before the first airplane had even taken flight. He was a man literally a century ahead of his time, writing down the blueprint for the future. Then, across the Atlantic, you had the American Robert Goddard. Unlike Tsiolkovsky, Goddard was a hands-on experimenter. He was the one who actually got his hands dirty. While his contemporaries scoffed, calling his ideas ludicrous, Goddard quietly worked in the fields of Massachusetts. In 1926, on a cold March day, he achieved what many thought was impossible. He launched the world's first liquid-fueled rocket. It was a modest flight, reaching an altitude of just 41 feet and lasting only 2.5 seconds. But its significance was monumental. It was the Kitty Hawk moment for the space age. It proved that the theory worked. The dream was no longer confined to paper and blackboards. It was now a tangible, albeit wobbly, reality. And in Europe, there was the German prodigy, Hermann Oberth. His book, The Rocket into Planetary Space, inspired a whole generation of German engineers and enthusiasts. He formed societies and clubs where passionate amateurs and budding scientists could gather, pool their knowledge, and conduct their own experiments. It was from these very clubs, from this crucible of shared passion and ambition, that many of the key figures of the space age would emerge. These three men, Tsiolkovsky, Goddard, and Oberth, are often called the fathers of modern rocketry. They never met. They worked in different countries and under vastly different circumstances, yet they all arrived at the same fundamental conclusions. They were united by that same ancient dream of reaching the stars. Of course, this burgeoning science was soon swept up in the turbulent currents of world history. The incredible power of rocketry was not lost on the military powers of the 20th century. The V-2 rocket, developed in Germany during World War II, was a terrifying weapon of destruction. But it was also, paradoxically, the most advanced rocket the world had ever seen. It was a terrifying glimpse into the dual nature of technology, its capacity for both immense creation and immense destruction. When the war ended, the technology and the brilliant minds behind the V2 were scattered, primarily between the two new global superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. And with that, the stage was set for a new kind of contest. The Cold War was beginning, and the ultimate high ground was not on any mountain or continent. It was in the infinite blackness above. The dawn of the space age was not a gentle sunrise. It was a sudden, thunderous explosion. In 1957, the world was stunned when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1. That tiny, beeping satellite, no bigger than a beach ball, circled the globe, its faint radio signal a proclamation to everyone below. The journey had begun. It was a technological marvel and a political earthquake. The dream of the stars was no longer a distant fantasy. It was a reality, orbiting right over our heads. The launch of Sputnik lit a fire under the United States, officially kicking off the space race. Suddenly, what had been the niche obsession of a few dreamers became a national priority. Schools revamped their science curriculums, funding poured into research, and a new generation of heroes was born: the astronauts and cosmonauts. These were the brave individuals who would strap themselves to the top of what were essentially controlled explosions, all for the chance to be the first to break the bonds of Earth and venture into the unknown. From those early, frantic days of the space race to the incredible moment we first set foot on another world, the story of rocketry is a testament to human ingenuity, perseverance, and our unwavering desire to explore. It's a story of how a simple firework evolved into a machine that could carry us to the moon. This journey, from a dream whispered around ancient campfires to the thundering roar of a Saturn V rocket, is one of the greatest adventures in human history. It's a story we'll be exploring in detail, from the pioneering visionaries to the nail-biting missions that took us to the brink and beyond. So stick around, because we're just getting started. Thank you so much for watching. If you're as fascinated by this journey as I am, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in our cosmic adventure. See you next time. Have you ever wondered why we don't just hop on a rocket to the moon for a weekend getaway? Or why sending a satellite into space is a multi-million-dollar affair? The simple and frankly frustrating answer is cost. Reaching orbit has always been, and still is, astronomically expensive. This isn't just a small hurdle. For decades, it was the single biggest roadblock slowing down our journey to the stars. To understand why, let's think about something more familiar: air travel. Imagine if every time an airplane landed, we had to throw the entire plane away. The engines, the wings, the seats, everything gone. You'd have to build a brand new Boeing 747 for every single flight from New York to London. Can you imagine how much a ticket would cost? Tens of millions of dollars, easily. Air travel would be a luxury reserved for only the wealthiest governments and corporations, not for everyday people. Well, for the first 60 years of the space age, that's exactly how we treated rockets. They were single-use disposable machines. From the mighty Saturn V that took us to the moon to the everyday rockets launching satellites, they all followed the same one-way path: launch, deliver the payload, and then the expensive, exquisitely engineered stages would either burn up in the atmosphere or crash into the ocean. Think about the sheer waste. A rocket is an incredibly complex piece of machinery, a symphony of advanced materials, powerful engines, and sophisticated electronics. Millions of hours of human ingenuity and billions of dollars are poured into creating these vehicles. And after a flight that lasts just a few minutes, we would discard them like a used paper cup. This throwaway philosophy had a massive impact. First, the price tag. Building a new rocket for every launch meant costs were always sky high. We're talking anywhere from $50 million to over $400 million per launch, depending on the rocket. At those prices, space exploration and utilization became a very exclusive club. Only nations with deep pockets or massive corporations could afford to play. This limited the number of scientific missions, delayed the deployment of communication satellites, and kept ambitious ideas like space tourism firmly in the realm of science fiction. Second, it drastically slowed down the pace of innovation. When you're building a new machine from scratch every single time, your launch rate is naturally slow. It takes months, sometimes years, to manufacture, assemble, and test a rocket. This meant we could only launch a handful of times a year. If a launch failed, and they often did in the early days, it wasn't just a loss of the satellite or cargo. It was a catastrophic financial setback that could delay a program for years. The high stakes and low frequency of launches made everyone incredibly risk-averse. People were hesitant to try new, daring technologies because if it failed, the consequences were too severe. Progress moved at a crawl. Let's break down where that cost comes from. A huge chunk is the hardware itself. The rocket engines are masterpieces of engineering, capable of withstanding extreme temperatures and pressures. The fuel tanks have to be both incredibly strong and incredibly lightweight. The guidance systems are more sophisticated than those in any jet fighter. All of that costs a fortune to build. Then there's the fuel. While it's not the biggest part of the cost, it's still significant. We're talking hundreds of thousands of gallons of highly refined and sometimes cryogenic propellants. But the real hidden costs are in the ground operations. You need a massive team of thousands of engineers, technicians, and support staff. You need sprawling launch facilities, tracking stations around the globe, and a complex logistics network to get everything in the right place at the right time. When you add it all up, you realize that the rocket itself is just one piece of a much larger and much more expensive puzzle. And for decades, we accepted that the most expensive part of this puzzle would be thrown away after just one use. It was like buying a new car, driving it off the lot, and then immediately steering it into a scrapyard. It just doesn't make sense. This fundamental problem, the tyranny of the launch equation, where cost was king and reusability was a dream, is the reason our progress in space seemed to stall after the Apollo program. We had proven we could reach the moon, but we hadn't figured out how to do it affordably or sustainably. The magnificent dream of space exploration was chained to the anchor of single-use rockets. But what if you could change that? What if, like an airplane, a rocket could fly to space, return to Earth, land, refuel, and be ready to fly again in a matter of weeks, or even days? Solving that one problem would be the key to unlocking the future of humanity in space. It would be the single most important breakthrough since the invention of the rocket itself. Because if you can reuse the rocket, the cost of a launch plummets. Instead of paying for a whole new vehicle, you're mostly just paying for fuel and refurbishment. Suddenly, the cost equation is flipped on its head. Space becomes more accessible, launch rates can skyrocket, and we can afford to take more risks and try more ambitious things. The barrier to entry drops, inviting a new generation of innovators and entrepreneurs to participate. The era of disposable rockets built a solid foundation, getting us to orbit and to the moon, but it couldn't take us any further. It was a dead end. To truly become a spacefaring civilization, to build cities on Mars, to mine asteroids, we had to solve the reusability problem. It was the great challenge of our time and the focus of our next chapter. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you're finding this fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We're just getting to the exciting part. See you in the next chapter. Welcome back to our series. Today we're diving into Chapter 3, Enter Elon Musk. In the year 2002, the dot-com bubble had burst, leaving a landscape of cautious investors and humbled tech visionaries. Yet from the ashes of this digital gold rush, a new kind of ambition was about to take flight. This is the story of a young entrepreneur who, fresh from a massive financial success, didn't look for the next big app or social network. Instead, he looked up at the stars. After co-founding the online payment system PayPal, Elon Musk and his partners sold it to eBay for a staggering $1.5 billion. For most people, this would be the final chapter, the ultimate success story. You buy a private island, you retire, you enjoy the fruits of your labor. But for Musk, his personal fortune of around $180 million wasn't an end goal. It was a launchpad. It was the fuel for a dream so audacious, so far beyond the scope of typical business ventures, that many in the established aerospace industry considered it pure fantasy. While others were investing in terrestrial real estate and stock portfolios, Musk was contemplating the future of humanity itself. He was deeply concerned about what he saw as existential threats to our species. From a catastrophic asteroid impact to a self-inflicted global disaster, he believed that having all of humanity's eggs in one basket, planet Earth, was an unacceptably risky strategy. The solution in his mind was as clear as it was radical. We had to become a multiplanetary species. We had to establish a self-sustaining human presence on another world. And the first logical step was Mars. But how do you even begin to tackle such a monumental task? Initially, Musk didn't set out to build rockets himself. His first idea was more of a grand philanthropic gesture, something he called the Mars Oasis. The plan was to buy a refurbished Russian intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM, and use it to send a small, automated greenhouse to the red planet. This miniature ecosystem, containing seeds and a nutrient gel, would land on Mars and begin to grow. The idea wasn't about complex scientific research. It was about inspiration. He imagined a time-lapse video of green plants sprouting against the red Martian soil, broadcast back to Earth. He believed this powerful image would capture the public's imagination, reminding everyone that the frontier of space was still open. He wanted to reignite the passion for space exploration that had largely fizzled out after the Apollo missions. He hoped it would galvanize NASA and the government to increase the space agency's budget and get serious about sending humans to Mars again. So with this vision in mind, Musk traveled to Russia multiple times in late 2001 and early 2002. He was on a mission to buy a rocket. Imagine that. A young tech millionaire, known for internet software, trying to negotiate with the hardened veterans of the Russian space industry. The meetings were, to put it mildly, a culture clash. The Russians were skeptical. They saw this enthusiastic, wealthy young American and didn't quite take him seriously. They quoted him exorbitant prices, likely thinking he would simply walk away. During one particularly frustrating dinner, fueled by vodka toasts, a Russian chief designer reportedly spat at Musk's ideas, questioning his credentials and his wealth. Despite the setbacks and the dismissive attitude, Musk persisted. He was serious. But after several trips, it became clear that this path was a dead end. The rockets were too expensive, and the negotiations were going nowhere. It was on the flight home from one of these failed Moscow trips that the true genesis of SpaceX occurred. Frustrated and disheartened, Musk was sitting on the plane with his small team. He started running calculations on his laptop. He opened a spreadsheet and began breaking down the fundamental costs of building a rocket from scratch. What were the raw materials? How much did aerospace-grade aluminum cost? What about the engines, the electronics, the fuel tanks? He had a background in physics and economics, a potent combination for this kind of first principles thinking. He asked a simple yet revolutionary question. What is a rocket actually made of, and how much do those components cost on the open market? As he crunched the numbers, a startling realization dawned on him. The raw materials needed to build a rocket were only a tiny fraction of the final price tag, maybe just 2 or 3%. The vast majority of the cost came from the established aerospace companies, with their decades of legacy systems, massive overhead, and inefficient production methods. They weren't incentivized to reduce costs. They were government contractors who often operated on a cost-plus basis. It was in that moment of calculation and clarity, tens of thousands of feet above the Atlantic, that the idea for SpaceX was born. Musk realized that if the Russians wouldn't sell him a rocket at a fair price, he would just have to build one himself. He believed he could apply the lean, agile principles of the Silicon Valley tech world to the rigid, slow-moving aerospace industry. He could build his own rockets, vertically integrated, for a fraction of the traditional cost. He wasn't just trying to get to Mars anymore. He was now on a mission to fundamentally disrupt the entire economics of space travel. So, in June of 2002, with $100 million of his own money, Elon Musk founded Space Exploration Technologies Corp., better known as SpaceX. His goal was not modest. It wasn't to become a niche satellite launch provider. From day one, the stated ultimate mission of the company was to make life multiplanetary. He hired a small team of brilliant, passionate engineers, many of whom were young and unburdened by the "this is how it's always been done" mentality of the legacy aerospace corporations. They set up shop in a sprawling warehouse in El Segundo, California. The early days were a chaotic whirlwind of ambition and engineering. They weren't just designing a rocket. They were building a new kind of company. A place where the lead designer was also the CEO, where engineers worked directly on the factory floor next to the hardware they were designing. They worked grueling hours, driven by a shared belief in a seemingly impossible goal. They weren't building a product to sell. They were building a vehicle to carry the dreams of humanity to another world. Many people thought he was crazy. He was pouring his entire PayPal fortune into an industry notorious for bankrupting even the most well-funded ventures. The Great Galactic Ghoul, as it was known, had a habit of consuming fortunes and delivering nothing but spectacular explosions on the launch pad. But Musk was undeterred. He was driven by a conviction that went beyond profit and loss. He saw a long-term existential imperative. This wasn't a business venture. It was a mission for survival. This pivotal moment, the founding of SpaceX in 2002, represents a fundamental shift in the story of space exploration. For the first time since the space race, a private individual, fueled by private capital and a singular vision, was attempting to do what only the world's largest superpowers had ever accomplished. He was picking up the torch that had been dropped decades earlier, not just to revisit the moon, but to push onward to the red planet. This was the calm before the storm, the quiet, reflective moment of decision before the years of explosive failures and triumphant successes that would follow. The dice were rolled. The journey to Mars had begun, not in a government building, but in a California warehouse with a spreadsheet and a very, very big dream. Thank you so much for watching. This is just the beginning of an incredible story. If you're enjoying this journey, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. We'll see you in the next one. Every grand story has its dark chapters, the moments where the dream teeters on the brink of collapse. For SpaceX, that chapter was written in fire, smoke, and falling debris over a remote Pacific atoll. This is the story of the first 3 Falcon 1 launches, a tale of near-catastrophic failure that almost ended Elon Musk's spacefaring dream before it ever truly began. After leaving PayPal with a fortune, Musk poured his heart, soul, and over $100 million into a single audacious goal: to make humanity a multiplanetary species. The first step was a rocket, but not just any rocket. It had to be reusable, affordable, and built from the ground up by a small, agile team. He called it the Falcon 1, named after the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. The dream was alive, but reality was about to deliver a brutal lesson. The team set up shop on Amalek Island, part of the Kwajalein Atoll. It was paradise and prison all at once. Beautiful, yes, but logistics were a nightmare. Everything from rocket parts to food had to be shipped in. The humidity was relentless, corroding equipment and testing the team's patience. They were a band of brilliant, sleep-deprived engineers, working around the clock, fueled by passion and instant noodles. March 24, 2006. The first launch attempt. The world was watching. The countdown reached 0. The Merlin engine roared to life and the Falcon 1 began to climb. For a few glorious seconds, it worked. The rocket soared, a silver needle against the blue sky. Then, just 25 seconds into the flight, disaster. A fire broke out near the main engine. The rocket lost thrust, spiraled out of control, and plunged into the ocean just a few hundred feet from the launch pad. The cause? A simple aluminum fuel line nut that had corroded in the salty island air and failed under pressure. A single 25-cent part had destroyed a multi-million-dollar rocket. The team was devastated. They had poured years of their lives into this, and it ended in a fireball. Musk, watching from Mission Control in California, put on a brave face for his team. He told them, "Look, this is a tough day, but we're going to get this right." But privately, the pressure was immense. He knew he had enough funding for maybe 3, at most 4, attempts. 1 down, 2 or 3 to go. The team didn't give up. They packed up the wreckage, analyzed the data, and got back to work. They redesigned the faulty part, improved their processes, and a year later, they were back on Amalek Island, ready for round 2. March 21, 2007. The second Falcon 1 stood on the pad. The countdown was flawless, the engine ignited, and the rocket ascended beautifully. It climbed higher and higher, faster and faster. First stage separation looked clean. For a moment, it seemed like they had done it. But then, Mission Control fell silent. The data showed a problem. The second stage engine had ignited, but the rocket began to oscillate, spinning like a top. The problem was a design flaw related to fuel sloshing in the upper stage tank. The oscillations grew until the rocket tumbled out of control, failing to reach orbit. Another failure. Closer this time, but still a failure. The emotional toll was mounting. 2 launches, 2 explosions. The media started to sharpen its knives. Pundits called Musk a fool, a dilettante playing with rockets. The dream was starting to feel like a delusion. The money was running out and the clock was ticking louder than ever. Musk addressed his team again. He acknowledged the heartbreak but reiterated the mission. Failure, he insisted, was an option here. If things weren't failing, they weren't innovating enough. They had learned more from this second failure than they could have imagined. They now understood the complex dynamics of fuel and microgravity, a lesson they would carry into all future designs. They pushed forward. A third rocket was built, incorporating all the hard-won lessons from the first 2 attempts. This time, they even had a paying customer. NASA itself was entrusting a small satellite to the Falcon 1. The pressure had never been higher. August 3, 2008, the third attempt. Everything had to be perfect. The launch was a spectacle. The rocket cleared the tower, a perfect straight ascent. It was faster, cleaner, more powerful than ever before. First stage separation was a thing of beauty. For the first time, the first stage peeled away cleanly from the second. But then the unthinkable happened. The first stage, due to a slight residual thrust, didn't separate fast enough. It recontacted the second stage engine nozzle just as it was igniting. The collision was catastrophic. Both stages were destroyed, along with NASA's satellite and the ashes of over 200 people, including astronaut Gordon Cooper and Star Trek's James Doohan, whose families had paid for a memorial spaceflight. This was the lowest point. 3 failures, 3 fireballs in the sky. The company was on the verge of bankruptcy. Musk would later say he had enough money for one more launch, one final roll of the dice. If the 4th launch failed, SpaceX was over. Tesla, his other venture, was also teetering on the edge of collapse during the 2008 financial crisis. It was, by all accounts, the worst year of his life. He was broke, his company was a string of failures, and the world was laughing. The team was emotionally and physically exhausted. Many had to be convinced to stay for one last try. How do you motivate a team that has only known failure? You remind them why they started. You remind them of the dream of Mars, of the grander vision. Musk gathered his remaining funds. He scraped together everything he had for one last shot. The 4th Falcon 1 was assembled with a desperate, focused intensity. Every weld, every wire, every line of code was checked and rechecked. There was no room for error. The fate of the entire company rested on this single launch. September 28, 2008. Just 7 weeks after the third disaster. The 4th Falcon 1 stood ready. The mood in mission control was thick with tension. Years of work, hundreds of millions of dollars, and the dreams of hundreds of people all came down to the next 9 minutes. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8, ... The Merlin engine roared to life. The rocket lifted off, climbing steadily into the darkening sky. The first few minutes felt like an eternity. Every sensor reading was scrutinized. The rocket passed the point where the first launch failed. It passed the point where the second launch failed. Then came the most critical moment, stage separation. The moment that had doomed the third flight. In mission control, you could hear a pin drop. Then, the call came through, stage separation nominal. A wave of relief, but no one celebrated yet. The second stage engine ignited. It burned, and it kept burning. The telemetry was perfect. The rocket accelerated, pushing its dummy payload higher and higher, faster and faster, toward the cold, unforgiving vacuum of space. And then, after 9.5 minutes that felt like a lifetime, the words that changed everything echoed through mission control. We have reached orbit. The room erupted. Engineers who had spent years in the trenches, who had faced ridicule and despair, were now screaming, hugging, crying. They had done it. Against all odds, they had done it. SpaceX became the first private company in history to reach orbit with a liquid-fueled rocket. That night, they weren't just a company. They were a testament to the power of human perseverance. From the ashes of 3 failures, a legend was born. That single success, snatched from the jaws of defeat, unlocked the future. It secured a massive NASA contract that saved the company and paved the way for the Falcon 9, the Dragon capsule, and everything that has come since. The story of the first 3 Falcon 1 launches isn't just a story about rockets. It's a story about resilience. It's a reminder that the path to success is often paved with failure, and that sometimes the difference between a dream and reality is the courage to try just one more time. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey through SpaceX's early days. If you found this story as inspiring as we do, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world. We'll see you in the next one. From the fiery heart of a failed launch to the dawn of a new era in spaceflight. This is the story of how a small rocket with big dreams, the Falcon 1, became the blueprint for the workhorse of modern space exploration, the Falcon 9. This isn't just about building bigger rockets. It's about a fundamental shift in how we reach for the stars. Let's rewind. After finally achieving orbit with the Falcon 1 on its fourth attempt, SpaceX had proven its concept. They had shown the world that a small, privately funded company could build a rocket and reach space. But Elon Musk's vision was always grander. The goal was never just to launch small satellites. The ultimate prize was making humanity a multiplanetary species, and for that, you need a much, much bigger rocket. The Falcon 1 was a crucial stepping stone. It was the testbed, the crucible where SpaceX forged its core technologies. Most importantly, it was where they developed the Merlin engine. This engine, a liquid-fueled marvel of engineering, was the heart of the Falcon 1, but it was designed from the very beginning with scalability in mind. Think of it like a building block. One Merlin engine powered the Falcon 1. But what if you could cluster them together? What if you used not one, but 9? This was the brilliantly simple yet incredibly complex idea behind the Falcon 9. The name itself tells the story: Falcon for the Millennium Falcon, and 9 for the 9 Merlin engines that would power its first stage. This multi-engine design was a game-changer for several reasons. First, it offered immense power. 9 engines working in concert could generate the thrust needed to lift far heavier payloads into orbit. Think large communication satellites, cargo for the International Space Station, and eventually people. Second, and perhaps even more critically, it offered redundancy. This concept is called engine-out capability. In a single-engine rocket, if that one engine fails, the mission is over. It's a catastrophic failure. But with the Falcon 9, if one of the 9 engines were to shut down during ascent, the remaining 8 could throttle up to compensate, still allowing the rocket to complete its mission. This built-in safety net was a revolutionary approach to rocket reliability, directly inspired by the multi-engine design of the Saturn V moon rocket. So the transition from Falcon 1 to Falcon 9 wasn't just about scaling up. It was about getting smarter. The team took every lesson learned from the 4 Falcon 1 launches, the successes and especially the failures. They learned about materials, about avionics, about ground systems, and about the brutal physics of launch. They refined the Merlin engine, making it more powerful, more efficient, and more reliable with each iteration. The 1C version of the Merlin was good, but the 1D, developed for later Falcon 9 South, was a masterpiece of rocketry. The structure of the rocket also had to evolve dramatically. It went from a slim, 2-stage vehicle to a towering giant. The fuel tanks had to be massively enlarged to feed the 9 hungry engines. The interstage, the section connecting the first and second stages, had to be redesigned to handle incredible forces. The payload fairing, the nose cone that protects the satellite during launch, grew in size to accommodate the larger cargo the rocket was now capable of carrying. But the most audacious part of the Falcon 9 design wasn't just its size or its 9 engines. Woven into its DNA from the very beginning was the idea of reusability. Even as they were designing the first Falcon 9, the engineers at SpaceX were thinking about how to bring the first stage back to Earth. This was the holy grail of rocketry, a concept that had been dreamed of for decades but was always dismissed as too difficult, too expensive, or simply impossible. The Falcon 1 was too small to even attempt a propulsive landing. But the Falcon 9 was different. Its size, power, and multi-engine configuration made the dream of recovery a possibility. The plan was audacious. After the first stage separated from the second stage high in the atmosphere, it would perform a series of complex engine burns to flip around, slow its descent, and guide itself to a precise landing, either back on land or on a drone ship at sea. To do this, it would need grid fins for aerodynamic control and strong deployable landing legs. These features weren't on the very first Falcon 9 South, but the structural provisions and the core concept were there. The first flight of the Falcon 9, known as V1.0, took place on June 4, 2010. It was a flawless success, delivering a mock-up of the Dragon spacecraft into a perfect orbit. The world took notice. This wasn't a small experimental rocket anymore. This was a serious commercial launch vehicle that could compete with the established giants of the aerospace industry. With that first launch, the era of the Falcon 1 officially came to an end. It had served its purpose brilliantly. It had taught SpaceX how to fly. Now its successor, the Falcon 9, was ready to take what it had learned and change the world. The evolution was complete, but the revolution was just beginning. The small rocket that could had given birth to the rocket that would redefine our access to space, paving the way for a future where the sky was no longer the limit. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through space history. If you've been inspired by the story of innovation and perseverance, please hit that like button and subscribe for more chapters in this epic saga. We'd love to have you as part of our community. See you in the next one. Ever looked at an airplane and thought, wow, imagine if we threw it away after just one flight? Sounds ridiculous, right? Yet for decades, that's exactly how we treated rockets. Every time we sent something to space, we'd essentially throw away millions of dollars worth of equipment. One man, Elon Musk, looked at this and said, "This is insane. We can do better." This is the story of how that simple yet revolutionary idea changed space travel forever. Welcome back to our series. Today, we're diving into Chapter 6, the vision of reusability. This is where the SpaceX story truly blasts off into legendary status. Musk wasn't just obsessed with getting to space. He was obsessed with making it affordable, accessible, and routine. And the key to that? Reusability. His vision was clear. A rocket should take off, deliver its payload, and then fly back to Earth. Land safely, refuel, and be ready for its next mission in a matter of days, not decades. Imagine trying to sell that idea in the early 2000s. The established aerospace industry basically laughed. They said it was impossible, a fantasy. The physics were too complex, the costs too high. But Musk's stubbornness is the stuff of legend. He famously told his team, "Imagine it's a suitcase full of cash that's falling from the sky. What would you do to make sure it lands softly and you can use it again?" That simple analogy became the guiding principle for one of the greatest engineering challenges of our time. So how do you teach a 14-story tall rocket traveling at hypersonic speeds to gracefully land itself? This wasn't just a small tweak. It required rethinking rocket design from the ground up. The team at SpaceX got to work on the Falcon 9, but this time with a radical new addition: landing legs. The first designs were almost comical, looking like spindly insect legs attached to a massive metal cylinder. They had to be incredibly light so they wouldn't weigh down the rocket on ascent, but strong enough to support the entire structure upon landing. The engineering challenge was immense. They had to deploy reliably in the harsh environment of re-entry, withstanding extreme temperatures and forces. But legs alone weren't enough. A falling rocket is inherently unstable. It's like trying to balance a broomstick on your finger, except this broomstick is on fire and falling from the edge of space. The solution came from a surprising place: Cold War-era Soviet missile designs. They were called grid fins. These waffle iron-looking attachments were placed at the top of the rocket's first stage. Unlike traditional fins, grid fins provide tremendous control and steering capability even at supersonic speeds, allowing the rocket to precisely guide itself back to a landing target. It was a brilliant piece of engineering borrowing, adapted and perfected for a new, peaceful purpose. The journey was anything but smooth. Early tests were explosive. The first few landing attempts of the Falcon 9 ended in spectacular fireballs. They'd hit the drone ship landing pad too hard, tip over, or run out of fuel just seconds from touchdown. The media had a field day, calling it Musk's folly. Each failure was broadcast live for the world to see. Many companies would have quit humbled by the public failures, but at SpaceX, each explosion wasn't a failure. It was data. Each fireball was a lesson. They analyzed every millisecond of telemetry, figured out what went wrong, and went back to the drawing board. Musk's leadership during this time was crucial. He pushed his team relentlessly, but he was also right there in the trenches with them, analyzing the data and maintaining the belief that it could be done. He fostered a culture of rapid iteration. Fail, learn, fix, and try again faster than anyone thought possible. This philosophy, born from the fast-paced world of Silicon Valley software, was now being applied to hardware, to rockets. It was a complete departure from the slow, cautious, and bureaucratic approach of traditional aerospace. And then, on December 21, 2015, the world held its breath. A Falcon 9 rocket launched, its first stage separated, and then it turned around. High above the Florida coast, it executed a perfect boost-back burn, firing its engines to reverse course. As it fell back to Earth, The grid fins steered it with pinpoint accuracy toward landing zone 1. On live streams around the globe, people watched a single point of light grow larger and larger. The landing legs deployed, a final engine burn slowed its descent, and with a gentle touch, the rocket stood perfectly upright, silhouetted by its own exhaust. The roar in mission control was deafening. It was a moment that sent shockwaves through the industry. What was once deemed a fantasy was now a reality. A rocket had launched to orbit and landed itself back on Earth. It was a Wright brothers moment for the 21st century. The vision of reusability was no longer a dream. It was a proven technology. This single achievement didn't just save money. It shattered the old paradigm and opened up a new frontier for what was possible in space exploration. It was the moment that turned SpaceX from an ambitious startup into a dominant force in the global launch industry. This single landing vindicated years of hard work, ridicule, and explosive failures. It proved that with a bold vision, relentless perseverance, and a willingness to fail in public, you can achieve the seemingly impossible. The Falcon 9 was no longer just a rocket. It was a symbol of a new era. The era of reusable rockets had begun, and it was all thanks to the stubborn obsession of one person and the incredible team that believed in his vision. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into one of the most exciting chapters in modern spaceflight. The story only gets more incredible from here. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part of our journey. We love hearing from you, so drop a comment below with your thoughts on this historic achievement. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of SpaceX. This is Chapter 7, and today we're getting up close and personal with the star of the show, the Falcon 9 rocket. We've talked about its missions and its impact, but now let's dissect this engineering marvel, piece by piece, from the ground up. What exactly makes the Falcon 9 so revolutionary? Let's find out. At the very heart of the Falcon 9's power are its engines. The first stage, the booster, is equipped with 9 Merlin 1D engines. That's right, 9. This isn't just for show. It's a critical design choice for both power and reliability. These engines are arranged in what SpaceX calls an octaweb configuration, one central engine surrounded by 8 others. This layout is not only structurally efficient, but it also allows for engine-out capability. This means that even if 1 or even 2 engines shut down during ascent, the remaining engines can compensate to ensure the mission continues successfully. Each of these Merlin engines is a powerhouse, generating immense thrust by burning a combination of highly refined kerosene, called RP1, and liquid oxygen. Together, these 9 engines produce over 1.7 million pounds of thrust at sea level, enough to lift this 23-story tall rocket off the ground and push it toward the heavens. It's this raw, controlled power that begins every single Falcon 9 journey. Now, let's talk about the overall structure. The Falcon 9 is a 2-stage rocket. This is a classic and efficient design for reaching orbit. The first stage, which we just discussed with its 9 Merlin engines, is the larger, lower section. Its primary job is to provide the initial massive thrust to get the rocket through the thickest part of Earth's atmosphere. It burns for about 2.5 minutes before its job is done. But here's where the magic of SpaceX comes in. This first stage isn't discarded to be lost in the ocean. It's designed for reuse. After it separates from the second stage, it performs a series of complex maneuvers to reorient itself, reignite some of its engines, and fly back to Earth for a precision landing. The second stage is the smaller section that sits on top. It has a single specialized Merlin engine that is optimized to operate in the vacuum of space. Once the first stage separates, this second stage engine ignites, carrying the payload, whether it's Starlink satellites, a Dragon capsule with astronauts, or a national security satellite, the rest of the way into orbit. This stage is responsible for the fine-tuning of the trajectory, placing the payload into its precise designated orbital slot. The entire rocket is built from an advanced aluminum-lithium alloy, which is both incredibly strong and lightweight, two essential properties for any vehicle trying to escape Earth's gravity. The 2 stages are connected by an interstitch, a composite structure that houses the separation mechanism and the grid fins. Speaking of grid fins, let's look at one of the most iconic and visually distinctive features of the Falcon 9. At the top of the first stage, you'll see 4 large waffle-like fins. These are the titanium grid fins. When the booster is screaming back through the atmosphere at supersonic speeds, These fins are crucial for steering. They are not like traditional, smooth airplane wings. Instead, their grid-like structure is incredibly effective at manipulating the supersonic airflow, providing immense control authority. Think of them as rudders, allowing the rocket to precisely guide itself toward its landing zone, whether it's a landing pad on the coast or a drone ship far out at sea. They are made from cast titanium, one of the few materials that can withstand the extreme heat and forces generated during re-entry. Watching these fins articulate in real time during a landing is like watching a masterclass in aerodynamic control. Finally, we come to the very bottom of the rocket, the landing legs. Tucked away along the base of the first stage during ascent, these 4 legs are the final piece of the reusability puzzle. They are made from advanced carbon fiber with aluminum honeycomb. Just seconds before touchdown, these legs deploy outwards and downwards, creating a wide, stable base. Each leg has a shock-absorbing system to cushion the impact of landing, ensuring the multi-million-dollar booster touches down gently. The deployment is a beautiful, almost balletic sequence that has become a signature moment of every Falcon 9 landing. From the raw power of the Merlin engines to the delicate precision of the landing legs, every single component of the Falcon 9 is meticulously designed and integrated to perform one of the most difficult feats in modern technology: routinely launching and landing an orbital-class rocket. It's a symphony of engineering that has truly changed our access to space forever. Thanks so much for joining me on this anatomical tour of the Falcon 9. It is an incredible piece of machinery, and understanding its parts helps us appreciate its performance even more. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more content. We love having you here, and your support means the world. Let me know in the comments what part of the Falcon 9 you find most fascinating. We'll see you in the next chapter. Welcome back, fellow explorers. Today, we're diving deep into the heart of the Falcon 9 rocket, the very thing that gives it its incredible power, the Merlin engine. This isn't just any rocket engine. It's a testament to engineering brilliance, a symphony of fire and steel that has redefined what's possible in space travel. So, buckle up as we journey into Chapter 8 of our SpaceX saga, the Merlin engine. So, what exactly is the Merlin? It's a family of rocket engines developed by SpaceX for use on their Falcon 1, Falcon 9, and Falcon Heavy launch vehicles. Imagine the power of 1,000 sports cars all unleashed in a single controlled explosion. That's the kind of energy we're talking about, but channeled with incredible precision. But what makes it so special? It's not just about raw power. It's about a design philosophy that prioritizes 3 key things: power, efficiency, and most importantly, reliability. Let's start with the fuel. The Merlin is a gas generator cycle rocket engine that burns a specific combination of propellants: superchilled rocket propellant 1, or RP1, which is a highly refined form of kerosene, and liquid oxygen, often called LOX. Why this combination? Kerosene is dense, meaning you can pack a lot of energy into a relatively small tank. It's also more stable and less expensive than other fuels like liquid hydrogen. The superchilled aspect is a classic SpaceX innovation. By cooling the RP1 and LOX to near their freezing points, SpaceX can make them denser. Denser fuel means more propellant fits into the same size tank, which translates directly to more performance, more payload to orbit, or a greater ability to land the booster back on Earth. It's a simple concept with profound implications, a perfect example of SpaceX's first principles thinking. Now, let's talk about the anatomy of this beast. The core of the Merlin is the turbopump. This is a truly remarkable piece of machinery. It's a single-shaft, dual-impeller pump that spins at tens of thousands of RPM. One side furiously pumps the kerosene, while the other pumps the liquid oxygen into the main combustion chamber. The power to drive this pump comes from a gas generator, which is essentially a mini-rocket engine itself. It burns a small amount of fuel and oxidizer to produce hot gas, which then drives the turbine. Think of it like a jet engine's turbine, but instead of pushing a plane, it's force-feeding the main engine with an immense volume of propellants. The engineering challenge here is managing cryogenic fluids, extreme pressures, and blistering temperatures all within a compact, lightweight package. Once the propellants are forced into the combustion chamber, the real magic happens. They ignite in a sustained, controlled explosion, creating a torrent of hot gas that is directed out of the engine's nozzle. This is where Newton's third law takes center stage. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. The massive volume of gas rocketing downwards creates an upward force thrust that lifts the entire Falcon 9 rocket off the ground and pushes it towards space. The Merlin 1D, the current variant, produces over 90 tons of thrust at sea level. Now multiply that by 9. That's the power of the Falcon 9's first stage at liftoff, nearly 850 tons of thrust pushing the rocket skyward. It's a visceral, ground-shaking display of raw power, but power is useless without reliability. This is where the Merlin engine truly shines and sets itself apart. From the very beginning, SpaceX designed the Merlin with reusability and reliability in mind. One of the key features is its ability to throttle. Unlike many rocket engines that are either on or off, the Merlin can be throttled down significantly, sometimes to as low as 40% of its maximum thrust. This is absolutely critical for the landing phase of the Falcon 9 booster. As the rocket descends, it needs to precisely control its speed, and the ability to adjust the engine's thrust in real time is what makes those pinpoint landings on drone ships and landing pads possible. Another crucial aspect of its reliability is the engine configuration on the Falcon 9 itself. The first stage uses a unique octaweb structure, arranging 8 Merlin engines in a circle around a central 9th engine. This layout isn't just for looks. It provides engine-out capability. If one of the 9 engines were to fail during ascent, the remaining 8 engines can burn longer to compensate and still successfully complete the mission. The flight computer can automatically shut down the malfunctioning engine and adjust the flight path. This redundancy is a cornerstone of SpaceX's philosophy, moving away from the fragile, single-point-of-failure designs of the past and towards a more robust, fault-tolerant system. We've seen this play out in real missions, where an engine anomaly occurred, but the vehicle still managed to deliver its payload to the correct orbit. That's not a failure. That's a demonstration of incredible design resilience. Furthermore, SpaceX's approach to manufacturing and testing is relentless. They don't just build one engine and hope it works. They build thousands. Every single Merlin engine that comes off the production line in Hawthorne, California, is rigorously tested at their facility in McGregor, Texas. Each engine is fired up multiple times on a test stand, including a full-duration mission duty cycle firing, simulating the exact conditions it will experience during a real launch. This intense testing regime ensures that any potential flaws are discovered on the ground, not thousands of feet in the air. This rapid iteration of building, testing, and flying allows them to constantly learn and improve the engine's design, making each generation more powerful and reliable than the last. The Merlin has evolved from the 1A to the current 1D, with each step bringing significant improvements in thrust, efficiency, and simplicity. The efficiency of the Merlin, measured by its specific impulse, is also world-class for a kerosene-based engine. Specific impulse is like a rocket engine's miles per gallon rating. The higher the number, the more efficient it is at converting propellant into thrust. SpaceX has continually tweaked the design of the nozzle, the injector, and the combustion chamber to squeeze every last bit of performance out of the RP1 and LOX combination. They also have 2 versions of the Merlin 1D. A sea-level version with a shorter nozzle optimized for performance in the atmosphere, and a vacuum version with a much larger nozzle extension. This larger nozzle is crucial for the Falcon 9's second stage, as it allows the engine to operate much more efficiently in the vacuum of space, where there's no air pressure to contend with. In conclusion, the Merlin engine is far more than just a piece of hardware. It's the workhorse of the commercial space industry. It is the embodiment of SpaceX's entire philosophy: innovate, iterate, and relentlessly pursue simplicity and reliability. Its power lifts immense payloads to orbit. Its efficiency makes those journeys economical, and its proven reliability and reusability have fundamentally changed our access to space. Every time we see a Falcon 9 launch and land, we are witnessing the legacy of the Merlin engine in action, a testament to what can be achieved when brilliant engineering is combined with bold ambition. It's the engine that made the reusable rocket a reality, and it continues to power our journey to the stars. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the incredible Merlin engine. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about the marvels of space exploration, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next chapter. We'd love to have you back. Until next time, keep looking up. Hello everyone, and welcome back. Today, we read journeying back to a pivotal moment in modern spaceflight history, The year 2010, after years of nail-biting attempts, fiery setbacks, and relentless perseverance with the smaller Falcon 1, SpaceX was finally ready to play in the big leagues. They were about to unleash a rocket that would change the industry forever. The Falcon 9. This is the story of its very first flight, a launch that had everything riding on it. By 2010, SpaceX wasn't just a quirky startup anymore. They had a massive NASA contract under their belt to resupply the International Space Station. The problem? They needed a much bigger, more reliable rocket to do it. The Falcon 1, as crucial as it was for proving their core concepts, just didn't have the muscle. The entire future of the company and its multi-billion-dollar partnership with NASA hinged on the success of this new 9-engine behemoth. The pressure was immense. A failure wouldn't just be a setback. It could have been the end of the line. The Falcon 9 was a fundamentally different beast. Its name comes from its 9 Merlin engines arranged in an octaweb pattern on the first stage. This wasn't just for power. It was for reliability. The design featured a groundbreaking concept called engine-out capability. In theory, the rocket could lose 1 or even 2 of its first-stage engines and still complete its mission. This level of redundancy was a game-changer, promising a level of safety and reliability that was previously unheard of in the commercial launch market. But a theory on a whiteboard is one thing. Proving it in the sky is another entirely. The vehicle for this historic flight was designated Falcon 9 Flight 1. Its payload was in a multi-million-dollar satellite. But something equally important, a mock-up of their Dragon capsule, called the Dragon Spacecraft Qualification Unit. This was essentially a boilerplate test article, designed to simulate the weight and aerodynamics of the real thing. The goal wasn't to deliver a customer's payload, but to prove that the rocket itself worked as designed. Could it reach orbit? Could it perform all its necessary maneuvers? The whole world, from Cape Canaveral to NASA headquarters to rival aerospace boardrooms, was watching. The launch campaign at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station's Space Launch Complex 40 was a marathon of testing and preparation. Every system, from the engines to the avionics to the ground support equipment, was scrutinized. The team conducted a wet dress rehearsal, fueling the rocket and running through the entire countdown sequence right up to ignition, and then a static fire, where they briefly ignited all 9 engines while the rocket was firmly clamped to the launch pad. Each test brought new data, new challenges, and a growing sense of anticipation. This wasn't a simulation anymore. It was real. Finally, the day arrived, June 4, 2010. The Florida weather, as it often does, played its own dramatic role. The initial launch window opened, but the team faced a series of nerve-wracking holds. There was a boat in the restricted launch zone, a common issue at the Cape. Then, there were technical gremlins. A helium pressure reading was off. A sensor gave a faulty reading. The countdown clock was started, stopped, and reset multiple times. For the SpaceX team and for everyone watching, the tension was almost unbearable. Was this going to be another scrub? Another delay in a story already full of them? With just seconds left in the final launch window of the day, something happened that could have easily ended the attempt. The terminal count sequencer, the automated system controlling the final moments of the countdown, detected an out-of-limits reading and triggered an automatic abort. The clock stopped at T-2 seconds. A collective groan could be heard across the control room, but the SpaceX team was different. Instead of accepting the scrub, an engineer quickly diagnosed the issue as a sensor error, not a genuine problem with the rocket. The call was made, recycle the count, try again. This kind of rapid, real-time problem-solving would become a hallmark of the company. The clock was reset for one last attempt. 10, 9, 8. The words, main engine start, echoed through the control room. A torrent of flame and smoke erupted from the base of the rocket as all 9 Merlin engines roared to life. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Falcon 9 rose from the pad, slowly at first, then with gathering, undeniable force. It was a picture-perfect descent, clearing the tower and thundering into the blue Florida sky. For the team that had poured their hearts and souls into this moment, it was pure vindication. But the mission was far from over. The first stage had to perform its burn, separate cleanly, and the second stage had to take over. Onboard cameras showed the first stage falling away, a breathtaking sight. Then, the single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage ignited, pushing the Dragon qualification unit higher and faster. A potential issue arose during the flight. A slight, unexpected roll began to develop in the second stage. It wasn't catastrophic, but it was an anomaly. It was a reminder that even in success, space is an unforgiving environment, and there are always new lessons to be learned. Despite the minor roll, the second stage engine burned for its full duration, pushing its payload into a near-perfect orbit. 9 minutes and 29 seconds after lifting off, the mission was declared a success. The Dragon spacecraft qualification unit was officially in orbit, circling the Earth. In the SpaceX control room in Hawthorne, California, the scene was one of absolute jubilation. Cheers, applause, and tears of relief filled the room. Elon Musk, visibly emotional, walked through the aisles, congratulating his team. They had done it. They had reached orbit on the first attempt with their brand-new, game-changing rocket. This single flight changed everything. SpaceX was no longer the underdog trying to get to orbit. They were now a proven orbital launch provider with a medium-lift rocket. They had demonstrated they could build and fly the hardware necessary to fulfill their NASA contract. The success of Falcon 9 Flight 1 unlocked the door to the future, to Dragon missions to the ISS, to the era of reusable rockets with Falcon 9's revolutionary landings, and eventually to the development of the Falcon Heavy and Starship. It was the moment SpaceX officially arrived on the world stage, not as a dream, but as a dominant force. That day in June 2010 wasn't just the launch of a rocket. It was the launch of a new era in space exploration. Thank you so much for joining me on this look back at a truly historic moment. It's incredible to see how far things have come since that first, tense launch. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel for more stories from the frontiers of science and technology. We've got so much more to explore together. See you in the next one. Have you ever seen something so audacious, so crazy that you just had to watch? That's exactly what the world thought in the early 2010s when SpaceX started strapping a giant rocket to a field in Texas and telling it to jump. This isn't just a quirky side story in the history of spaceflight. This is the charming, absolutely essential story of the Grasshopper, the awkward teenager of rockets that had to learn to walk before Falcon 9 could run, or more accurately, before it could land. Before reusable rockets were a reality, they were a science fiction dream. For decades, we built these magnificent multi-million-dollar machines, lit the fuse, and then watched as they became expensive trash falling into the ocean. It was like buying a brand new Boeing 747, flying it from New York to London once, and then ditching it in the Atlantic. Insane, right? Elon Musk thought so too. He knew that for humanity to truly become a spacefaring civilization, we had to crack the code of reusability. And the first wobbly step on that journey was a bizarre-looking vehicle, affectionately named the Grasshopper. So, what was this thing? Imagine a Falcon 9 first stage, but stripped down. It had just one Merlin engine, the same powerful engine that would eventually power the workhorse Falcon 9, but here its job was much humbler. It was attached to a massive four-legged steel structure that looked like something out of a 1950s sci-fi movie. It was tall, gangly, and honestly a little goofy. Its official name was the Falcon 9 Reusable Development Vehicle, or F9R Dev1, but nobody called it that. To everyone at SpaceX and the fans watching from afar, it was the Grasshopper poised to hop in a field in McGregor, Texas. The goal was simple, but the engineering was anything but. The Grasshopper had to do something no orbital-class rocket stage had ever done before: take off vertically, hover in midair like a helicopter, and then land vertically gently right back on its own launch mount. This is called vertical takeoff, vertical landing, or VTVL. While smaller vehicles had done it, doing it with a machine of this scale, powered by an engine designed to push payloads to orbit, was a whole new ballgame. It required incredibly precise control over the engine's thrust, a sophisticated guidance system, and nerves of steel. The first test in September 2012 was modest. A tiny leap just 6 feet into the air, hovering for 3 seconds before touching back down. It might not sound like much, but it was monumental. It was proof. The physics worked. The control systems, while nascent, could handle it. The Grasshopper had taken its first baby step. From there, the team got bolder. Test after test, the Grasshopper climbed higher and higher. Each flight was a new record, a new piece of the puzzle falling into place. With each jump, the height increased. From 6 feet to 17 feet, then a huge leap to 131 feet. The team was learning with every single second of flight data. How did the rocket behave in the Texas wind? How did the engine throttle up and down with the required precision? How did the landing legs absorb the impact? They even added a passenger for some of the later flights, a mannequin dressed in a cowboy outfit, playfully named Johnny Crash. It was a classic SpaceX touch, injecting a bit of fun and personality into a high-stakes, high-stress research and development program. The jumps became more and more ambitious. In one flight, the Grasshopper soared to over 800 feet, hovered, and then for the first time performed a lateral maneuver, moving sideways about 300 feet before returning to the center of the pad for a perfect landing. This was a critical demonstration. A returning rocket booster wouldn't just be coming straight down. It would need to navigate its way to a precise landing zone, whether on land or a drone ship at sea. The Grasshopper was proving it could be done. Its most impressive flight, and its last, happened in October 2013. The Grasshopper ascended to an altitude of 2,441 feet, nearly half a mile high. It hung there in the Texas sky for over a minute, a surreal sight before descending gracefully back to Earth. In total, the Grasshopper completed 8 successful test flights, each one pushing the envelope further than the last. It never failed. It never crashed. It did its job perfectly, teaching SpaceX invaluable lessons. It was the schoolmaster for the Falcon 9, so why did it stop? Because it had served its purpose. The Grasshopper was a low-altitude testbed. The data gathered was so successful that SpaceX was ready to move on to the next phase, high-altitude, high-velocity tests with a more advanced vehicle, the F9R Dev 2. The Grasshopper, this humble, leggy pioneer, was retired. It had proven the fundamental concept of VTVL for a large rocket stage. It showed that you could, in fact, balance a skyscraper on a column of fire. The legacy of the Grasshopper is nothing short of profound. Every time you see a Falcon 9 or Falcon Heavy booster land, whether it's a picture-perfect touchdown at the Cape or a dramatic landing on a drone ship in the middle of the ocean, you are watching the legacy of that quirky test vehicle that hopped around a Texas field. It was the crucial, unglamorous, yet utterly charming first chapter in the story of rocket reusability. It turned an impossible dream into an engineering problem, and then it solved it, one hop at a time. It's a beautiful reminder that sometimes the greatest leaps for mankind start with a single, small hop. Thank you so much for joining me on this look back at one of my favorite stories in modern spaceflight. It's a testament to bold thinking and iterative engineering. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter in this incredible journey. We have so much more to explore. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Welcome back. Today we're diving into Chapter 11, the first attempts to land. This is a story not of immediate triumph, but of spectacular failures, each one a crucial stepping stone on the path to making history. It's a tale of fire-twisted metal and the quiet, unyielding persistence of a team determined to achieve the impossible. Before SpaceX could even dream of landing a rocket on solid ground, they had to prove it could be done at all. The first frontier was the vast, unforgiving expanse of the ocean. The initial plan was deceptively simple. After separating from the second stage, the Falcon 9 booster would reignite its engines to slow its descent and attempt a soft touchdown in the water. The very first attempt in September 2013 was both a failure and a monumental success. As the booster fell back to Earth, it began to spin uncontrollably due to aerodynamic forces. The spin was so fast that the centrifugal force starved the engine of fuel, causing it to shut down just before impact. The rocket hit the water hard. But here's the incredible part. It survived. Telemetry showed that most of the descent sequence had worked. The rocket had relit its engines, it had slowed down, and it had proven that a controlled descent was not just a theoretical fantasy. For the engineers watching, this explosive splashdown was a beacon of hope. They now knew they were on the right track. The next few attempts saw incremental progress. They added nitrogen gas thrusters to control the rocket's spin, refining the complex dance of aerodynamics and engine burns. Each launch brought them closer, the splashdowns getting softer and more controlled. But landing in the water was never the end goal. It was a messy, saltwater corroding, and ultimately impractical way to recover a billion-dollar piece of hardware. They needed a solid target. Enter the drone ship. A floating, autonomous landing pad named Just Read the Instructions. It sounds like something out of a science fiction novel because, in many ways, it was. The first attempt to land on the drone ship came in January 2015. The world held its breath. The booster descended perfectly, targeting the deck with incredible precision. It came down, touched the landing legs to the surface, and then disaster. The rocket had run out of hydraulic fluid for its grid fins, the waffle iron-like structures that steer it. It lost control in the final seconds, tipped over, and exploded in a massive fireball. So close, yet so far, the public saw a fiery explosion. The engineers, however, saw a different picture. They had hit a moving target in the middle of the ocean from the edge of space. The problem wasn't the guidance system. It was a simple matter of not having enough hydraulic fluid. A fixable problem. The mood in mission control wasn't despair. It was a quiet, analytical resolve. They had the data. They knew what to do next. 2 months later, they tried again. This time, the weather was perfect, the rocket was healthy, and the drone ship was waiting. The booster descended, slowed, and approached the deck. It looked perfect. But at the last moment, a sticky valve in the engine's throttle system caused a delay in the engine's response. The rocket landed too hard, tipped over again, and was consumed by flames. Another spectacular failure for the cameras. Another priceless lesson for the team. A sticky valve. Another solvable problem. You see the pattern here. Each explosion, each crash wasn't just a failure. It was a data point. It was a real-world experiment that no computer simulation could ever fully replicate. While the world saw rockets blowing up, the SpaceX team saw a process of elimination. They were systematically identifying and solving every single thing that could possibly go wrong. They tried landing on the drone ship again. This time, the rocket descended beautifully, touched down, and stood perfectly upright for a few brief, glorious seconds. Then, it gently tipped over and fell into the sea. The cause? Excess lateral velocity. The landing legs simply couldn't handle the sideways motion on the rolling deck of the ship. Another problem, another solution to engineer. This period was the ultimate test of resilience. Imagine spending months preparing for a launch, only to watch your creation end in a fireball. For any other organization, this string of failures might have been the end. But for SpaceX, it was just part of the process. They were learning at an incredible pace, fueled not by success but by the detailed analysis of their mistakes. Each failed landing attempt was a sacrifice, paving the way for the breakthrough that they knew was just around the corner. They weren't just building rockets. They were building knowledge, one explosive lesson at a time. The quiet determination in the face of repeated public failure is what truly defines this era. They knew they were close. The world just had to wait and see. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. If you find these stories of innovation and perseverance as fascinating as I do, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us continue to bring these incredible chapters of space history to you. We'll see you next time. Have you ever heard a name so poetic it stops you in your tracks? Of course, I still love you. It sounds like a line from a heartbreaking love song, but it's actually the name of a giant, autonomous drone ship. A floating landing pad in the middle of the ocean, waiting for a rocket to return from space. This isn't just engineering. This is poetry in motion, a story born from the mind of science fiction author Iain M. Banks and brought to life by SpaceX. The name itself is a promise, a message sent from humanity to its boldest creations. It says, no matter how far you go, no matter the risks, we're here, waiting for your return. Today, we read diving into the heart-stopping drama of one of the most pivotal moments in modern space exploration. The first successful landing of a Falcon 9 rocket on a drone ship. Before this, rockets were single-use giants, destined to become expensive debris at the bottom of the sea. The idea of landing one on a moving target smaller than a football field, in the vast unpredictable ocean, seemed less like science and more like a fantasy. SpaceX had tried and failed multiple times. Each attempt was a nail-biting spectacle. Rockets would topple over, explode on impact, or miss the deck entirely. The world watched, holding its breath. Skeptics called it impossible, a fool's errand. But with every fiery failure, they learned. They gathered data, refined their algorithms, and prepared for the next attempt. The stakes were astronomical. Success would rewrite the rules of spaceflight, slashing costs and paving the way for a future among the stars. Failure would just be another expensive lesson. The drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, or Ossusly for short, bobbed in the Atlantic, a lonely beacon of hope. Its sister ship, Just read the instructions, another nod to Banks's Culture series, waited in the Pacific. These weren't just platforms. They were characters in this unfolding saga. They represented an audacious belief in second chances. On April 8, 2016, the Falcon 9 booster CRS-8 launched, sending a Dragon capsule filled with supplies towards the International Space Station. Its primary mission was complete. But its second act was about to begin. As the booster separated and began its long fall back to Earth, a silence fell over mission control. On screens, a live feed showed a tiny, fiery dot growing larger and larger. This was the moment of truth. The rocket performed a series of complex engine burns, slowing its descent from hypersonic speeds, steering itself with grid fins that sliced through the atmosphere. It was a ballet of fire and precision, all happening miles above the ocean. Down on the deck of Osisli, cameras pointed skyward, capturing the final, terrifying seconds. The feed was shaky, buffering, cutting in and out. The tension was unbearable. For everyone watching, from the engineers at SpaceX to space fans around the globe, time seemed to slow down. Then, through the pixels and the smoke, it appeared. The Falcon 9 booster, descending gracefully, its landing legs deploying like an eagle's talons reaching for its perch. It touched down. A collective gasp, then a moment of stunned silence. Did it just happen? The rocket stood there, upright, perfectly centered on the ship's insignia. A plume of vapor vented from its side. It was stable. It was whole. Then the eruption. Mission Control exploded in a roar of cheers, applause, and unrestrained joy. Tears streamed down faces. People hugged, jumped, and shouted. It was a release of years of frustration, hard work, and unwavering belief. They had done it. They had landed a rocket on a ship in the middle of the ocean. This wasn't just a technical achievement. It was a profoundly beautiful and emotional moment. The sight of that rocket standing tall against the backdrop of the open sea was a testament to human ingenuity and persistence. It was a symbol that the impossible is only impossible until someone does it. That single perfect landing changed everything. It proved that reusable rockets were not a dream, but a reality. It fundamentally altered the economics of accessing space, making it more affordable and sustainable. Every Starlink satellite, every crewed mission, every future plan for Mars stands on the foundation built that day. The booster, scorched but standing, had returned home. And the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, was there to welcome it back. The name, once a quirky sci-fi reference, suddenly took on a profound new meaning. It captured the essence of the entire endeavor, the love for the dream, the forgiveness for past failures, and the unwavering commitment to bringing these magnificent machines home. It was a promise kept. This event wasn't just about a rocket. It was about challenging limits and dreaming bigger. It shows us that with enough passion and perseverance, we can turn science fiction into science fact. It's a reminder that sometimes, the most audacious goals require not just brilliant engineering, but a touch of poetry too. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey back to one of spaceflight's most iconic moments. If you found this story as inspiring as I do, please give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next chapter. What's another moment in science or exploration that gave you chills? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, keep looking up. The year is 2017. Imagine the scene at Kennedy Space Center. The air is thick with anticipation, a mix of hope and heavy skepticism. For years, the idea of a reusable rocket was pure science fiction, a costly fantasy according to many industry veterans. They said it couldn't be done. They said the economics didn't make sense. They said the physics was too unforgiving. SpaceX and Elon Musk were on the verge of either a historic triumph or a very public, very expensive failure. This wasn't just another launch. This was the second act for a rocket that had already been to space and back. Falcon 9 Flight 32 was about to launch, carrying the SES-10 satellite. But the real payload, the real mission, was the rocket booster itself. It had flown before, on a mission to resupply the International Space Station, and then miraculously landed on a drone ship in the Atlantic. Now, cleaned up and inspected, it stood on the launch pad again, ready to defy gravity a second time. The world was watching. News channels, space enthusiasts, and a whole army of doubters were tuned in. The countdown began, echoing through the Florida coast. 10, 9, 8, every second was a drumbeat of history. 765, would the engines ignite? 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff. A thunderous roar ripped through the air as the Falcon 9 climbed, a brilliant spear of fire against the sky. The first stage burned with perfect, controlled fury. The initial ascent was flawless, just as it had been on its first mission. But everyone knew the launch was only half the battle. The true test was yet to come. After separating from the second stage, the booster began its fiery balletic descent back to Earth. On screens around the world, a live feed showed the booster, fins deployed, guiding itself through the atmosphere. It was a glowing dot, getting larger and larger, a meteor under intelligent control. It was aiming for a tiny target in the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean, a drone ship named Of Course I Still Love You. The tension was unbearable. Could lightning strike twice? Could this piece of hardware, which had already endured the hell of re-entry once, do it again? Then, the final moments. The landing legs deployed. The engine reignited for the landing burn, slowing its descent. And then, contact. Touchdown. A perfect upright landing in the middle of the ocean. For the second time, the control room at SpaceX erupted. Cheers, applause, tears of joy. It wasn't just a successful landing. It was a paradigm shift. In that single moment, the entire landscape of space travel was redrawn. Every skeptic was silenced. Every argument against reusability was vaporized. SpaceX had just proven, unequivocally, that a rocket could launch a payload to orbit, return to Earth, and then be refurbished to fly again. This wasn't just an engineering feat. It was an economic revolution. The cost of accessing space was about to plummet. The reaction was immediate and global. Competitors who had dismissed the idea were forced to go back to the drawing board. News headlines declared the dawn of a new space age. What was once a dream, a crazy idea from a maverick CEO, was now a hard physical reality. It was the moment SpaceX went from being a disruptive startup to the undisputed leader of the commercial space industry. This wasn't just about saving money. It was about changing the future. Reusability unlocked a cadence of launches previously thought impossible. It paved the way for massive satellite constellations like Starlink, and more importantly, it made the dream of a multiplanetary species, of cities on Mars, seem not just possible, but plausible. The landing of that first reflown booster was more than just a technological demonstration. It was a turning point for humanity's journey to the stars. It was the day the future of space exploration arrived, not with a quiet whisper, but with the thunderous roar of a rocket landing back on Earth, ready to fly again. It was a promise kept, a gauntlet thrown down, and the beginning of a chapter in human history that is still being written today. This single event, this one reflight, did more than just silence the critics. It inspired a new generation of engineers, scientists, and dreamers. It showed the world that with enough determination, audacity, and a refusal to accept the word impossible, we can achieve truly extraordinary things. The echoes of that landing are still being felt, pushing us further, faster, and higher than ever before. Thank you so much for joining me on this look back at a pivotal moment in space history. If you enjoyed this journey, please hit that like button, subscribe for more stories like this, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next chapter. Let me know in the comments what you think was the most game-changing moment in space exploration. Until next time, keep looking up. Have you ever looked up at the stars and wondered what it would take to actually go there? For decades, the answer was an astronomical amount of money. Every time we sent something to space, we essentially threw away a skyscraper-sized, incredibly complex machine. Imagine buying a brand new airplane for a single flight from New York to London, and then just ditching it in the Atlantic. That's been the reality of space travel for most of its history. But what if you could land that plane and fly it again? This one simple yet revolutionary idea has completely rewritten the economics of space exploration. Welcome to Chapter 14, The Economics of Reuse. Today, we're diving into how making rockets reusable didn't just tweak the numbers. It fundamentally transformed our entire approach to accessing space. Let's start with the most direct impact: cost. Before reusability became a reality, the price tag for a single rocket launch was staggering. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. A significant chunk of that cost, often over 70%, was the rocket hardware itself, the engines, the fuel tanks, the guidance systems. By throwing this away every single time, we were locking ourselves into an incredibly expensive and inefficient cycle. Think about it from a business perspective. If your primary cost of goods is something you can only use once, your prices will always be high and your market will be limited to a very select few, like governments and massive corporations. This was the old space paradigm. Then, companies like SpaceX entered the scene and asked a question that was both childishly simple and profoundly difficult. Why can't we land the rocket? After years of spectacular, fiery failures that many experts deemed a fool's errand, they finally did it. The first successful landing of an orbital-class rocket booster was a watershed moment. Suddenly, the most expensive part of the launch vehicle wasn't disposable anymore. So how much did this actually change things? The numbers are jaw-dropping. While a traditional, expendable launch could cost anywhere from $150 million to $400 million, a flight on a reusable Falcon 9 rocket is advertised for around $67 million. And as the technology matures, that price is expected to drop even further. This isn't just a 10 or 20% discount, it's a paradigm shift. It's like the cost of an international flight dropping from the price of a mansion to the price of a family car. This dramatic cost reduction has a powerful ripple effect. The second major transformation is the frequency of launches. When you have to build a brand new rocket for every single mission, it's a slow and laborious process. It takes months, even years, to manufacture, assemble, and test a single rocket. This created a bottleneck. There were only so many launch pads and so many rockets available, meaning long waits and a very limited number of opportunities to get to orbit. Reusability shatters that bottleneck. Once a booster is recovered, it can be inspected, refurbished, and prepared for its next flight in a matter of weeks, not years. This has led to an unprecedented launch cadence. We've gone from a world where a few dozen launches per year was a big deal, to a single company launching nearly every week. In 2023, SpaceX alone launched 96 times. That's more than most countries combined. This high frequency is a game changer. It means satellites for communication, Earth observation, and scientific research can be deployed faster and more reliably. It means a broken satellite in a constellation can be replaced quickly, ensuring service isn't disrupted. The space train is now leaving the station on a regular, predictable schedule, rather than once or twice a year. This reliability opens up entirely new business models that were simply unthinkable in the era of expendable rockets. Think of global internet constellations like Starlink, which require thousands of satellites in orbit. Such a project would have been economically and logistically impossible without rapid and reusable launch capability. The third, and perhaps most profound, change has been in the relationship between government agencies like NASA and the private sector. For a long time, NASA designed, built, and operated its own rockets. The space shuttle was an incredible engineering feat, a partially reusable vehicle, but it was also incredibly complex and expensive to operate, ultimately costing over $1 billion per flight. After the shuttle's retirement, NASA was at a crossroads. How would they get their astronauts and cargo to the International Space Station? Instead of trying to build the next big government-owned rocket system from scratch, they took a different, more commercial approach. This was the birth of programs like the Commercial Resupply Services and the Commercial Crew Program. NASA essentially said to private companies, "We won't tell you how to build the rocket. We're just going to be a customer. Here are our safety and performance requirements. You build a system that meets them, and we will buy flights from you." This was a radical shift. NASA transitioned from being the developer and operator to being an anchor tenant, a reliable first customer. This stimulated a tremendous amount of private investment and competition. Companies now had a clear financial incentive, a multi-billion-dollar contract from NASA, to develop new, efficient, and cost-effective launch systems. Reusability was the key that unlocked the full potential of this new public-private partnership. A private company could only offer a competitive, fixed-price bid to NASA if they knew they could control their costs. By reusing their rockets, they could recoup their development expenses and turn a profit while still offering NASA a price far lower than what it would cost to run a government-owned program. This partnership has been a spectacular success. For the first time since the Apollo missions, American astronauts are launching from American soil, not on a NASA-owned vehicle, but on rockets built and operated by private companies like SpaceX. NASA, in turn, is freed from the business of being a space taxi to low Earth orbit. This allows them to focus their resources and expertise on the next giant leaps, returning to the moon with the Artemis program and eventually sending humans to Mars. They can now Focus on the science and exploration, buying the ride there from the burgeoning commercial space industry. In essence, the economics of reuse has created a virtuous cycle. Lower costs lead to more frequent flights. More frequent flights create a stable market, which encourages more private investment and innovation. This innovation, in turn, leads to even more capable and less expensive systems, further lowering the barrier to entry for space. We're seeing a Cambrian explosion of new space companies working on everything from satellite servicing to space tourism and manufacturing in microgravity. This isn't just about saving money for billionaires and governments. It's about democratizing access to space. What was once the exclusive domain of two superpowers is now accessible to universities, smaller countries, and startups with big ideas. The economic revolution of reusability is the engine driving this new space age, an age defined not by national prestige alone, but by commercial viability, innovation, and a tangible return on investment. The skyscraper we used to throw away after every trip is now coming home, refueling, and getting ready for the next journey, opening up a universe of possibilities that we are only just beginning to explore. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the economics of spaceflight. It is a topic that truly shows how one brilliant engineering solution can reshape an entire industry and our future as a species. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss our next chapter. We have so much more to explore together. See you next time. In the grand saga of space exploration, some machines become legends. They're not just metal and fire. They're symbols of a new era. Today, we're looking at the final, perfected form of a true game-changer, the Falcon 9 Block 5. This isn't just another rocket. It's the culmination of years of relentless innovation, the machine that made reusable rockets a routine reality. After the dramatic lessons learned from the Amos 6 failure with Block 3, SpaceX went back to the drawing board. They didn't just fix a problem. They re-envisioned the entire Falcon 9 platform. The goal was no longer just to land a rocket. The new goal was to fly it again and again, quickly, safely, and affordably. This philosophy gave birth to the Block 4, an interim version that tested many new components. But the true masterpiece, the final evolution, was the Block 5. So what makes the Block 5 so special? Let's start with the heart of the beast, the Merlin 1D engines. On the Block 5, these engines aren't just powerful. They're incredibly resilient. SpaceX increased their thrust by about 8%, pushing them to their full potential. But more importantly, they were redesigned for reusability. Key components like the turbine wheels, which are subjected to immense stress, were made from advanced single-crystal superalloys, dramatically improving their fatigue resistance. This meant they could endure multiple flights without needing a major overhaul, a critical step towards rapid reuse. Then there's the structure of the rocket itself. The entire first stage was optimized for a life of repeated, fiery re-entries and hard landings. A major change was the octaweb, the structure that holds the 9 first-stage engines. In previous versions, it was bolted together. On the Block 5, it's a welded structure, making it stronger, lighter, and much faster to manufacture. This change alone was a huge step in streamlining the production and refurbishment process. Heat protection also got a massive upgrade. You'll notice the base of a Block 5 booster is black. That's not just for looks. The entire engine section and the landing legs are coated in a new, reusable thermal protection system. This durable, fire-resistant coating replaced the single-use, ablative paint used on earlier versions, which had to be repainted after every flight. Now, the rocket is inherently better at surviving the scorching heat of atmospheric re-entry. And what about those distinctive black landing legs? They're not just painted. They are now retractable, made from carbon fiber, and feature a much more robust deployment mechanism. Previous versions had legs that were removed and reinstalled. The Block 5's legs simply fold up against the booster's body after landing, ready for the next journey. It's a small detail that saves an enormous amount of time and manpower on the ground. Another key innovation, and one you might not see, is the switch to what are called composite overwrapped pressure vessels, or COPVs, of a new design. These tanks hold the helium used to pressurize the propellant tanks. After the Amos 6 incident, they were redesigned to be far more robust, eliminating the complex fueling procedures of the past and making the entire system inherently safer. This was a critical step for the rocket's biggest job, carrying astronauts. That's right, the Block 5 wasn't just designed for satellites. It was designed for people. It is the first and only commercially built rocket to be certified by NASA to launch astronauts to the International Space Station. Every single component, from the avionics to the structural margins, was scrutinized and upgraded to meet NASA's stringent human rating requirements. Safety and reliability were baked into its very DNA. The Block 5 had to be more than just successful. It had to be trustworthy, and the results speak for themselves. The first Block 5 launched in May 2018. Since then, it has become the most flown operational rocket in the world. SpaceX has achieved a launch cadence that was once thought impossible, sometimes launching multiple missions in a single week. We've seen individual boosters fly more than 20 times, a testament to the incredible success of the Block 5's design. This isn't just about launching rockets. It's about changing our entire relationship with space. By making access to orbit reliable and affordable, the Falcon 9 Block 5 has enabled the Starlink constellation, which is bringing internet to the most remote corners of the globe. It has powered scientific missions, launched commercial satellites that we rely on every day, and most importantly, restored America's ability to send its own astronauts into space from its own soil. The Block 5 is a workhorse. It's the final word in a decade-long development story. It represents the fulfillment of a promise that rockets could be more like airplanes, capable of flying again and again. While SpaceX's eyes are now set on the colossal Starship, the Falcon 9 Block 5 will continue to be the backbone of the space industry for years to come. It's a quiet, reliable giant that has truly and permanently changed the world. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the engineering marvel that is the Falcon 9 Block 5. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more explorations into the technology that shapes our future. See you next time. Have you ever looked up at the stars and wondered how we get there? For decades, the answer was always a government-led mission. But what if I told you the way we reach for the cosmos has fundamentally changed? This is the story of a revolutionary partnership, a tale of trust, daring innovation, and a rocket named Falcon 9. It's the story of how NASA and a private company, SpaceX, joined forces to open a new chapter in human spaceflight. Welcome to Chapter 16, NASA and the Commercial Crew Program. Let's rewind the clock. For 9 long years, after the retirement of the Space Shuttle fleet in 2011, American astronauts had no way to launch into space from American soil. To get to the International Space Station, our astronauts had to hitch a ride on Russian Soyuz rockets. While the collaboration was a testament to international partnership, it came at a hefty price, upwards of $80 million per seat. More importantly, it meant the United States, a nation that put the first humans on the moon, had lost its independent capability to launch its own people into orbit. It was a gap in our national pride and a strategic vulnerability. NASA knew this couldn't be the long-term solution. They needed a new ride to space, but instead of building it all themselves, they decided to try something radical. They decided to bet on the burgeoning private space industry. This was the birth of the Commercial Crew Program. The idea was simple yet profound. NASA wouldn't just be the owner and operator of the spacecraft anymore. Instead, they would become a customer, purchasing transportation services from private companies. It was a shift from a government-run program to a public-private partnership designed to foster competition, drive down costs, and accelerate innovation. Imagine it like this. Instead of building and running its own airline, a government agency decides to buy tickets from existing commercial airlines. This was the philosophy. NASA set the destination, the International Space Station, and the rigorous safety requirements. It was up to the private sector to figure out the best, most efficient way to get there. 2 companies rose to the challenge. Boeing with its Starliner capsule, and a relatively young, audacious company called SpaceX, led by Elon Musk, with their Crew Dragon capsule launched by the Falcon 9 rocket. While Boeing was a legacy aerospace giant with decades of experience working with NASA, SpaceX was the disruptive newcomer. They had already proven their Falcon 9 could deliver cargo to the ISS, but carrying humans? That was a whole different ballgame. The stakes were infinitely higher. The journey wasn't a straight line to the launch pad. It was filled with immense technical challenges, rigorous testing, and a level of scrutiny that pushed both NASA and SpaceX to their limits. Remember, the Falcon 9 was a game-changer for its reusability. SpaceX had mastered landing its first stage boosters, a feat many thought impossible. But now, they had to prove this rocket, and the new Dragon capsule perched on top was safe enough for the most precious cargo of all: human lives. This required a new kind of relationship between NASA and a contractor. It wasn't just about checking boxes and meeting specifications, it was about deep, embedded collaboration. NASA engineers worked side by side with SpaceX teams. They shared data, debated designs, and meticulously reviewed every single system, from the life support in the capsule to the software controlling the rocket's ascent. This was a story of building trust. NASA, with its decades of experience and its solemn duty to astronaut safety, had to learn to trust the innovative, fast-moving culture of SpaceX. And SpaceX had to earn that trust by demonstrating a relentless commitment to safety and reliability, proving that their move fast and break things philosophy could be balanced with the unforgiving physics of spaceflight. Every test, every simulation, every successful cargo mission was a brick in the foundation of this trust. One of the most critical moments was the in-flight abort test in January 2020. This was the ultimate safety demonstration. SpaceX had to prove that if something went catastrophically wrong with the Falcon 9 rocket during launch, the Crew Dragon capsule could safely jettison itself and its crew away from the danger. The test was a spectacular success. The capsule's Super Draco engines fired, rocketing it away from the intentionally failing booster, and it splashed down safely in the Atlantic. This test wasn't just a technical milestone. It was a powerful statement that astronaut safety was the absolute top priority. Finally, the historic day arrived, May 30th, 2020. The world watched as NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, clad in sleek futuristic SpaceX suits, walked across the gantry at Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex. 3-9 the very same pad that had launched Apollo missions to the Moon and the first and last space shuttles. It was a poignant moment, bridging the legacy of America's past space achievements with its bold new future. As the countdown reached 0 and the 9 Merlin engines of the Falcon 9 roared to life, it was more than just a rocket launch. It was the culmination of a decade of hard work, a validation of a daring new strategy, and the triumphant return of American human spaceflight. The sight of the Falcon 9 piercing the Florida sky with 2 American astronauts on board was a powerful symbol of what can be achieved when government vision and commercial innovation work together. The mission, called Demo 2, was flawless. Crew Dragon docked with the International Space Station, and after 2 months in orbit, Bob and Doug returned to Earth, splashing down safely in the Gulf of Mexico. The Falcon 9 had not only delivered them to orbit, but the commercial crew program had delivered on its promise. It had reopened the frontier for American astronauts, from American soil on an American rocket. The success of Demo 2 wasn't an endpoint. It was a beginning. Since that flight, Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon have become the workhorse for ferrying astronauts, not just from NASA, but from international partners and even private citizens to the space station. It has created a reliable and cost-effective space taxi service, allowing NASA to focus its resources on the next giant leap, returning humans to the Moon with the Artemis program and, eventually, venturing to Mars. The partnership between NASA and SpaceX for the commercial crew program is more than just a successful engineering project. It's a blueprint for the future of exploration. It demonstrates that by fostering a competitive commercial market, we can accelerate our progress, lower the cost of accessing space, and unleash a new wave of innovation. It's a story of shared success, where the ambitions of a government agency and the ingenuity of a private company align to achieve something truly historic. So the next time you see a Falcon 9 launch lighting up the night sky, remember, it's not just a rocket. It's a symbol of a new era. It represents a powerful collaboration, a story of trust built over years of hard work, and the rocket that brought human spaceflight home. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey into modern spaceflight fascinating, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We have so many more stories to explore together. See you next time. Hello and welcome back to our deep dive into the world of SpaceX. This is Chapter 17, Starlink and Global Connectivity. We've talked about the incredible power and reusability of the Falcon 9 rocket, but what is its primary mission today? Well, more often than not, it's launching fleets of Starlink satellites, quietly transforming our planet's connectivity from orbit. Imagine a world where high-speed internet isn't a luxury confined to cities. Imagine remote villages, research stations in Antarctica, or ships crossing the vast Pacific, all connected with the same reliability you'd expect at home. That's the audacious goal of Starlink, and Falcon 9 is the workhorse making it happen. Unlike traditional internet satellites, which are huge, expensive, and sit in very high geostationary orbits, Starlink takes a completely different approach. It's a mega constellation of thousands of small, mass-produced satellites flying in low Earth orbit, or LEO. Think of it like a dense net blanketing the globe. Flying so much closer to Earth at about 550 kilometers up means the signal has a much shorter distance to travel. This drastically reduces latency or lag, which is that annoying delay you experience during video calls or online gaming. Starlink aims for latency under 20 milliseconds, which is on par with, or even better than, many ground-based fiber optic networks. So, how do you build such an ambitious network in the sky? This is where the synergy between Falcon 9 and Starlink becomes a masterclass in vertical integration. SpaceX doesn't just design the satellites. It designs the rocket to launch them. And it doesn't just launch them one by one. Thanks to Falcon 9's massive payload capacity and a clever flat panel dispenser design, a single launch can carry a whole stack of up to 60 satellites at a time. Picture a deck of cards being expertly dealt into space. The process is a spectacle of precision engineering. After the Falcon 9's second stage reaches the target orbit, it initiates a slow rotation. Then, the tension rods holding the stack of satellites are released. The rotation gently pushes each satellite away from the dispenser, one after another, in a graceful, silent deployment. There are no springs, no complex mechanisms, just physics. This minimizes the risk of collision and ensures the satellites spread out evenly as they begin their journey. It's an elegant, efficient, and reliable system, honed over hundreds of launches. The reusability of the Falcon 9 booster is the economic engine that makes Starlink feasible. Traditional expendable rockets would make the cost of launching thousands of satellites astronomically high. But by flying the same booster again and again, some have flown over 20 times. SpaceX has slashed the cost of access to space. This allows them to populate the Starlink constellation at a speed and price point that was once unthinkable. It's a perfect loop. Falcon 9's low-cost launches enable the Starlink business case, and Starlink, in turn, provides a steady stream of launch customers for Falcon 9, funding further rocket development. Once deployed, the satellites aren't just passive relays. Each one is a sophisticated piece of technology. They use their onboard krypton-powered ion thrusters to climb from their initial deployment altitude to their final operational orbit. This is a slow but very efficient process. During this orbit-raising phase, they undergo a full systems checkout. These satellites communicate not just with the ground, but also with each other, using advanced space lasers. This creates a mesh network in space, allowing data to be routed from one satellite to another at the speed of light, bypassing the need for numerous ground stations. If you're on a boat in the middle of the ocean, your signal can hop between satellites until it reaches one that zips over a ground station connected to the global internet. It's essentially a fiber optic network in the sky. The impact of this is already being felt worldwide. In rural areas where laying fiber is too expensive, Starlink is providing a lifeline for education, business, and telehealth. During natural disasters, when ground infrastructure is destroyed, Starlink terminals can be deployed in minutes to restore communication for first responders and affected communities. We saw this in Ukraine, where it became a vital tool for maintaining communication lines. It is connecting previously unconnected schools in the Amazon rainforest and enabling scientists in remote field locations to transmit huge datasets in real time. Of course, a project of this scale isn't without its challenges and debates. One of the main concerns from the beginning has been the issue of space debris and the impact on astronomy. Thousands of new satellites could increase the risk of collisions, and their brightness can interfere with astronomical observations. SpaceX has been actively working to address this. They've introduced measures like the VisorSat, a sunshade to reduce the satellite's reflectivity, and they are painting surfaces black to absorb more light. They've also programmed the satellites to autonomously perform maneuvers to avoid potential collisions with other objects, using data from the U.S. Space Force. And at the end of their life, the satellites are designed to use their onboard propulsion to deorbit and burn up completely in Earth's atmosphere. ensuring they don't become permanent space junk. The Starlink story is still in its early chapters. The constellation is constantly growing, with Falcon 9 launching new batches of satellites almost weekly. The technology is evolving, with newer, more capable satellites being developed for launch on SpaceX's next-generation rocket, Starship, which will be able to deploy hundreds at a time. The vision is to create a seamless, high-speed, low-latency internet service that blankets the entire planet, from the densest cities to the most desolate landscapes. It's a fundamental rethinking of how we connect our world, all made possible by the quiet, methodical, and relentless launch cadence of the Falcon 9. One launch, one deployment, one orbit at a time. It's knitting the digital fabric of the 21st century across the night sky. Thank you so much for joining me for this chapter. The story of SpaceX is one of incredible ambition and even more incredible engineering. If you enjoyed this video and want to continue the journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you think about Starlink and its global impact. We'll see you in the next chapter. Have you ever looked up at the stars and wondered what's next? For decades, space exploration felt like something only giant government agencies could do. It was incredibly expensive, rockets were used once and then discarded, and the pace of innovation felt slow. Then something changed. A single rocket, the Falcon 9, didn't just reach orbit. It came back. It landed itself, ready to fly again. And with that one, seemingly impossible act, it kicked off a revolution that is reshaping our journey to the stars. This is the story of that impact, how one rocket inspired a new space race, not between nations but between innovators, dreamers, and entrepreneurs all across the globe. Let's rewind to the time before Falcon 9. The space industry was dominated by legacy giants. Launching a satellite was a monumental undertaking costing hundreds of millions of dollars. The business model was built on single-use rockets, like throwing away a brand new airplane after just one flight. It was reliable, yes, but it was also a massive barrier. If you were a small company with a brilliant idea for a new satellite or a new space-based service, the cost of entry was just too high. The dream of space was stuck in a financial traffic jam. Then came SpaceX. Their mission wasn't just to get to space, but to fundamentally change the economics of getting there. The key? Reusability. The idea of a reusable rocket wasn't new, but no one had cracked the code for orbital-class boosters. The technical challenges were immense. Imagine trying to land a skyscraper-sized pencil on a tiny platform in the middle of the ocean, after it just endured the fiery fury of a launch. It sounded like science fiction. But SpaceX, led by Elon Musk's relentless vision, treated it like an engineering problem. They iterated, they failed, they learned. We all watched those early landing attempts, the explosions, the near misses. But with each attempt, they got closer. And then, in December 2015, it happened. The Falcon 9 booster landed successfully on land. A few months later, they did it on a drone ship at sea. The industry would never be the same. Suddenly, the impossible was possible, and everyone was watching. The success of the Falcon 9 was like a starting pistol for a new generation of aerospace companies. It proved that a private company, driven by a bold vision, could achieve what was once the exclusive domain of superpowers. This wasn't just about SpaceX. It was a proof of concept for the entire commercial space sector. Investors who once saw space as a high-risk gamble started to see a genuine market opportunity. Venture capital began pouring into a new ecosystem of space startups. These weren't your traditional aerospace giants. They were nimble, innovative, and ready to challenge the status quo. All around the world, new companies started popping up, each one inspired, in some way, by the Falcon 9's success. Companies like Rocket Lab in New Zealand, with their Electron rocket, focused on providing dedicated launches for small satellites, a market that was exploding thanks to lower launch costs. They even announced their own plans for reusability with their Neutron rocket. In Europe, companies like Isar Aerospace and Orbex emerged, developing their own launch vehicles to provide sovereign launch capability for the continent. In China, a vibrant commercial space sector blossomed, with companies like Landspace and iSpace developing their own rockets, some openly pursuing reusability with methane-fueled engines. A path SpaceX is also forging with its Starship. The ripple effect went far beyond just rockets. The promise of frequent, low-cost access to space created a boom in satellite technology. Startups began designing constellations of small satellites for everything from Earth observation and climate monitoring to global internet connectivity. Companies like Planet Labs, which images the entire Earth every single day, or Starlink, which aims to provide internet to the most remote corners of the globe, are only feasible in a world where launching satellites is affordable and routine. The Falcon 9 didn't just lower the cost of launch. It unlocked a whole new platform for innovation in orbit. This new era is defined by a different mindset. The old way was slow, cautious, and expensive. The new way, pioneered by SpaceX and now adopted by many, is about rapid iteration, embracing failure as a learning opportunity, and vertically integrating manufacturing to control costs and speed. Think of it like the shift from mainframe computers to personal computers. Once, computing power was centralized and rare. Then, it became accessible, personal, and spurred an explosion of software and applications no one could have predicted. The Falcon 9 did that for space. It democratized access to the final frontier. This global impact is creating a virtuous cycle. More launch providers mean more competition, which drives down prices even further. Lower prices enable more companies to build and launch satellites. More satellites provide more data and services, creating new markets and opportunities on Earth. We're seeing this play out in real time. From precision agriculture that uses satellite data to optimize crop yields, to maritime tracking that improves shipping efficiency, to disaster response that relies on up-to-the-minute imagery, the benefits of this new space age are touching our lives in countless ways. So, what does the future hold? The revolution is far from over. SpaceX is now pushing the boundaries again with Starship, a fully reusable transportation system designed to take humans to Mars and beyond. But they are no longer the only ones dreaming big. Companies around the world are developing their own next-generation reusable vehicles, space tugs to move satellites in orbit, and even plans for commercial space stations. The Falcon 9 didn't just build a ladder to space. It handed out the blueprints for everyone else to build their own. The legacy of the Falcon 9 won't just be the number of satellites it launched, or the number of times its boosters landed. Its true, lasting impact is the global wave of innovation it unleashed. It transformed space from a place of national prestige into a platform for human progress, driven by a new generation of pioneers. It proved that with bold thinking and relentless execution, we can solve the hardest problems and open up new worlds of possibility. The sky is no longer the limit. It's the beginning of a new, vibrant, and global chapter in our human story. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the incredible impact of the Falcon 9. If you found this story as inspiring as we do, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the technology and stories that are shaping our future. Let us know in the comments what part of this new space race excites you the most. We'll see you in the next one. Have you ever looked up at the sky and wondered about the minds behind those rockets piercing through the clouds? We see the spectacular landings, the fiery launches, and the ambitious goals of reaching Mars. But behind every successful mission, behind every perfectly executed maneuver, there are people. This is their story. This is the human side of SpaceX. Welcome back. In our journey through the story of SpaceX, we've talked a lot about the technology, the rockets, and the vision. But today, we're shifting our focus. We're going to pull back the curtain and meet the unsung heroes, the engineers, technicians, and dreamers who pour their lives into this grand endeavor. These are the individuals who turn science fiction into science fact. Imagine a sprawling factory floor, not in the distant future, but right now in Hawthorne, California. The air buzzes with a unique energy, a mix of intense focus, collaborative chatter, and the hum of machinery. Here, you won't find a rigid old-school corporate structure. Instead, you'll see a young, vibrant workforce. Many are fresh out of college, their minds brimming with the latest theories, and an unyielding desire to build something that matters. Walk past a workstation and you might see an engineer, headphones on, deep in a complex simulation of a landing burn. They're not just crunching numbers. They're retrying to teach a 14-story tall rocket how to land on a dime in the middle of the ocean. They'll run the simulation hundreds, even thousands of times, tweaking variables by the smallest fraction, all to find that perfect, elegant solution. Every successful landing you see on a live stream is the result of countless hours spent right here, in front of a screen, chasing perfection. Move a little further, and you'll find the technicians. The ones with grease on their hands and an intimate knowledge of every nut, bolt, and wire. These are the artisans of the space age. They're the ones who physically assemble the Merlin engines, who meticulously weld the rocket's steel skin, and who wire the intricate avionics that serve as the rocket's brain. Their work requires a level of precision that is almost beyond comprehension. A single misaligned component, a loose connection, could be the difference between a historic achievement and a catastrophic failure. They carry that weight on their shoulders every single day, and they do it with pride and an unwavering commitment to quality. One of the most legendary parts of SpaceX culture is the all-nighter. It's not just a myth, it's a rite of passage. When a launch window is approaching or a critical problem arises, the factory transforms. Cots appear, pizza boxes stack up, and the lights stay on 24/7. It's an environment of shared sacrifice. You'll see a lead engineer working side by side with a junior technician, both equally invested in solving the problem. There's no hierarchy when a rocket is on the line. There's only the mission. These long hours are fueled by more than just caffeine and adrenaline. They're fueled by a shared dream. Talk to anyone at SpaceX, from the janitor to the lead propulsion engineer, and you'll hear it in their voice. They believe they are part of something bigger than themselves. They aren't just building rockets. They're building the future of humanity. They are actively working to make life multi-planetary. This isn't just a job, it's a calling. Let's talk about the pressure. Imagine you've spent 3 years of your life working on a specific valve for the Raptor engine. You've tested it, refined it, and you believe it's perfect. Then, during a full-scale engine test in the middle of Texas, it fails. The test is a fiery spectacle, a multi-million-dollar setback. In many organizations, this would be a moment of blame, of finger-pointing. At SpaceX, the culture is different. The first question isn't, who did this? It's, what did we learn? Failure is embraced not as an end, but as a data point. The team rallies around the problem. They analyze the telemetry, sift through the wreckage, and work together to understand the root cause. The engineer whose valve failed isn't cast out. They're at the center of the solution, armed with newfound knowledge that will make the next version stronger, better, and more reliable. This philosophy of failing forward is what allows SpaceX to innovate at a speed that leaves the rest of the industry in awe. It's a tough, demanding process, but it forges both resilient hardware and resilient people. And it's not just about the big, dramatic moments. It's about the quiet, personal sacrifices. It's the engineers who miss birthdays, anniversaries, and family holidays because a launch campaign is underway at Cape Canaveral or Boca Chica. It has the technicians who move their families across the country to be closer to the test sites, living and breathing the mission. They do this because they are driven by a profound sense of purpose. They are true believers. Think about the first successful rocket landing on the, of course, I Still Love You drone ship. We all saw the video feed, the rocket descending from the heavens, balancing on a pillar of fire. The control room erupted in cheers. But those cheers weren't just for a successful maneuver. They were the release of years of frustration, of near misses, of explosions on the launch pad and in the sky. It was the culmination of thousands of hours of work from thousands of people, all culminating in that one perfect moment. In that control room were people crying, hugging, and staring in disbelief at what they had just accomplished together. It was a deeply human moment, a testament to their collective perseverance. The dreamers of SpaceX are a special breed. They are inspired by the grand vision, the idea of cities on Mars and a bustling civilization among the stars. But they are also pragmatists, grounded in the hard realities of physics and engineering. They are the ones who figure out the nitty-gritty details. How do you refuel a spacecraft in orbit? What's the best way to manufacture heat shield tiles at scale? How do you create a life support system that can sustain a crew for months on end? These aren't just abstract problems. They are the homework assignments, the whiteboard sessions, and the late-night debates that fill the days and nights at SpaceX. It's a culture that thrives on ambition and challenges conventional wisdom. The phrase that's impossible is often seen as the starting point for a new engineering challenge, not the end of the conversation. So the next time you watch a Starship prototype soar into the Texas sky, or see a Falcon 9 booster return to Earth with pinpoint accuracy, take a moment to think about the people you don't see. Think about the young engineer who designed the landing leg mechanism. Think about the welder who joined the stainless steel rings of the fuselage. Think about the software developer who wrote the millions of lines of code that guide the vehicle. SpaceX is more than just a company. It's a collective of passionate, dedicated, and brilliant individuals who have come together to chase an audacious dream. They are the engine, the guidance system, and the heart of this incredible endeavor. The rockets are awe-inspiring, but the human spirit that builds them is the true marvel. They are the ones turning the dream of the stars into a destination. Thank you so much for joining me on this deeper look into the human side of SpaceX. It's the people who truly make this story so compelling. If you enjoyed this video and want to continue this journey with us, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us continue to create this content for you. We'll see you in the next chapter. Our journey with the Falcon 9 has been nothing short of extraordinary. We've witnessed rockets land themselves, missions launch with unprecedented frequency, and the cost of accessing space plummet. But as incredible as the Falcon 9 is, it was never the final destination. It was the stepping stone, the masterclass in rocketry that paved the way for something far grander, a vehicle designed not just to visit space, but to build a future in it. This is the story of Starship, the next giant leap for humanity. Imagine a spacecraft, towering over 120 meters tall, gleaming in stainless steel. It's not just a rocket. It's a fully and rapidly reusable transportation system, the first of its kind. The Falcon 9 taught SpaceX how to land first stages. Starship aims to perfect this dance, landing both its Super Heavy booster and the Starship upper stage, ready to be refueled and relaunched in a matter of hours, not weeks or months. This is the key that unlocks the solar system. Think of it like an airplane. You don't throw away a Boeing 747 after one flight. This same logic, once a science fiction dream, is now the core principle of Starship. The goal is staggering, to make life multiplanetary. This isn't just about planting a flag and coming home. It's about establishing a self-sustaining city on Mars. Starship is designed to carry up to 100 people per trip, along with the tons of cargo, infrastructure, and supplies needed to build a new branch of civilization. Why Mars? It's the most Earth-like planet in our solar system, with a day length remarkably similar to our own and resources like water ice that can be harnessed for drinking water and rocket propellant. It represents a chance to back up the hard drive of humanity, ensuring our long-term survival. But the journey to Mars is just the beginning of Starship's potential. With its ability to be refueled in orbits, Starship can become a gateway to the entire solar system. Imagine missions to the asteroid belt to mine precious resources, or voyages to the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn, like Europa and Enceladus, which may harbor oceans beneath their frozen shells, and potentially life. Starship could deploy massive next-generation space telescopes, far larger than James Webb, giving us an even clearer window into the origins of the universe. It transforms space from a place we visit to a place where we can live and work. Closer to home, Starship could revolutionize travel right here on Earth. Point-to-point travel could whisk you from New York to Shanghai in under 40 minutes. The same technology that takes us to Mars could connect our own world in ways we've only dreamed of, making long-haul flights a thing of the past. It is a testament to how pushing the boundaries of space exploration often leads to profound benefits for everyone on Earth. The development has been a spectacle of rapid, iterative design. We've seen prototypes built in the open fields of South Texas, each one a lesson learned. From early hops to high-altitude flights, each test brought spectacular successes and, yes, a few rapid, unscheduled disassemblies. But this is SpaceX's philosophy: build, fly, fail, learn, and repeat. Each explosion wasn't a failure, but a data point, pushing the design forward at a breathtaking pace. This relentless cycle of innovation is what separates Starship from traditional, slower-paced aerospace programs. It's engineering in real time, a thrilling process to watch unfold. As we stand on the cusp of this new era, it's worth taking a moment to reflect. For all of human history, we have looked up at the stars and wondered. We told stories about them, navigated by them, and dreamed of one day touching them. The flickering lights in the night sky have always been a symbol of the vast, the unknown, the possible. The legacy of Falcon 9, now carried forward by Starship, is to turn that wonder into a reality. It's about taking our collective dreams and forging them into steel. This endeavor is more than just a technological achievement. It's a fundamentally human one. It speaks to our innate curiosity, our desire to explore what lies over the next hill, or in this case, the next planet. It requires courage, ingenuity, and a belief in a future that is more expansive and hopeful than the present. It's a mission that can unite us, giving us a common goal to strive for as a species. When you look up at the night sky, you see the same stars our ancestors saw. But soon, you might also see the silent, steady light of a starship making its way to Mars, carrying the hopes and dreams of humanity with it. We are a part of this universe, born from stardust, and now, we are finally taking our first real steps to go back out amongst the stars, not as visitors but to find our place in the cosmos. The journey is just beginning. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible exploration of what's to come. If you're as excited about the future of space as I am, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next journey. Until next time, keep looking up.